Good afternoon. On behalf of KPCC, welcome to AirTalk's 19th annual Film Week Oscar preview event for the 93rd Academy Awards. While we'd much prefer to be able to greet you in person at the Theater Days Hotel as we normally do, we're thrilled you're joining us today in virtual land. I'm Jon Cohn, and I oversee live programming and events for KPCC and LAist. All of the programming you hear on KPCC and see on LAist is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you to all of you. Special shout out to the members out there that have specifically supported our annual Film Week Oscar preview events, and to those folks who purchased Pay What You Want tickets for today's virtual event. If you're not already a member and you're in a position in which you can give, you can visit us online at support.kpcc.org/in-person. Don't worry, that link should be appearing on the screen and in the chat now-ish. If you want to stay up to date on upcoming events, virtual and eventually in person, please sign up for our events newsletter. You should also see the link for that on your screen and posted in the chat now. Today's event will be audio recorded as a live to tape for broadcast on AirTalk as a Film Week special later this week. Throughout today's event, I invite you to engage with us and your fellow attendees in the chat section. And don't be shy about sharing your thoughts on the nominees and non-nominees. That is, after all, part of the fun. If you have a question, hold on to it for our Q&A segment after the formal part of the program. You can share those questions in the chat. And please, this is straight from Larry, so you know it's serious. Please include your name and where you're joining us from today. Without further ado, the host of Southern California's longest continuously running daily talk program, AirTalk, and your host for the afternoon, Larry Mantle.
Thank you so much, John. It's wonderful to be with you today. And I have to admit, this feels so different than what we're used to every year when for 18 previous gatherings, we've done it in person first at the historic Egyptian Theater on Hollywood Boulevard. I remember the first year so well. It was a torrential night of rain. We did it on a weeknight. I believe it was a Thursday night at the Egyptian. And amazingly, we got a couple hundred people come out for it for the very first year, even though it was in a downpour. We eventually moved it to Sunday afternoon, the week before the Academy Awards are given out, and moved to the bigger Theater at Ace Hotel as the size of the audience grew every year for our Film Week program. Well, now it's the 19th annual Film Week Academy Awards preview, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be able to come into your home to do this today, a much more personal way, and I look forward to being able to see you in person next year when we hope to get back in doing this in a face-to-face program. 10 of our Film Week critics are here for the program. As John said, it is being recorded, essentially live to tape, when it'll air in the regular time slot for Film Week coming up in this coming week. One thing to keep in mind is that our critics who join us today, who seem like they have just all this ready information and critique at their top of mind, comes from seeing some weeks up to 15 films a week. You can imagine the number of hours that are involved in that. It's absolutely extraordinary, the dedication that our critics put into this. And it is just a sheer pleasure for me to get together with them every week, 2 or 3 of them at a time, and to be able to catch up with them and talk about what films of the week they thought were really worthwhile. I'm sure that you've seen a number of the Academy Award nominated films. Maybe some of you have even seen all 8 of the Best Picture nominees, and maybe some of the other categories as well. So I think we'll have a lot of fun hearing what our critics have to say in this fast-paced format. So we have 2 smaller panels of critics. Each are going to do 4 of the major categories of the Oscars. Then we bring everybody together, all 10 of our critics, to do Best Director and Best Picture. We'll do that until the end of the radio broadcast, and then we'll take your questions, as John said, in the chat. So we're going to get ready to roll then with the actual broadcast. From the Moan Broadcast Center and homes across Southern California, this is the 19th Annual Film Week Academy Awards Preview, virtual edition. Welcome, I'm Larry Mantle with 10 Film Week critics ready to tell us which movies, actors, writers, and directors are most worthy of being honored at this Sunday's Oscars. Our team of critics for the first categories are Angie Han, deputy editor at Mashable, Charles Solomon of Animation Scoop and Animation.com, and author of the recently published The Art of Wolfwalkers, Lael Loewenstein of the Santa Monica Daily Press, Tim Cogshell of Alt Film Guide and Synagogues.com, and Wade Major of Synagogues.com. We begin with the category of Best Animated Feature, in which the nominees are Onward, directed by Dan Scanlon, Over the Moon, directed by Glenn Keane and John Cars, Shaun the Sheep Movie, Farmageddon, directed by Will Betcher and Richard Phelan, Soul, directed by Pete Docter and Kemp Powers, and Wolfwalkers, directed by Tom Moore and Ross Stewart. Only appropriate I begin with Charles Solomon. Charles, quickly, your thoughts on this category.
Well, this has been a two-film race all along, Larry. Soul is American computer animation, studio work at its best. Wolfwalkers is independent European drawn animation at its best. Both films have interesting stories, imaginative designs, some groundbreaking animation. I like both films. I like both directors. And I alternate which I would rather see win, but they're both excellent films, and either one is certainly worthy of this or could actually hold its own in any of the major categories.
Angie Han, what do you think, looking at the 5 animated nominees?
It's all of them to varying degrees. So there's no film in this category that I'm unhappy to see here. And I concur with Charles that Soul and Wolfwalkers are probably my 2 favorites. But if I had to pick between them, I'm going to give the edge to to Wolfwalkers. I love the 2D kind of hand-drawn looking animated style of it. I love the timeless fairy tale feel that it gives the story. And I love the way that it deals with some sophisticated ideas in a way that I think adults will find engaging and that kids can also understand.
Tim, what do you think?
Well, Larry, I think that Charles and Angie are right. Soul and Wolfwalkers, right? That's the conversation that we're having. Look, I love both of these movies. They're both beautiful. I particularly love them because they're about cultures that we do not often have a chance to see in animation and in any form, really here. The music in Wolfwalkers is lovely, but that score for Soul, John Baptiste, Trent Reznor and all, oh my God. And I think that that's the thing that will do it for Soul.
Lael.
I
think we just lost Lael. So let's see. Wade, which film would you choose?
It is that conversation between Soul and Wolfwalkers. It's funny. I mean, I should point out, Over the Moon has some sentimental following simply because Audrey Wells, the late screenwriter who passed in 2018, wrote the script. Glenn Keane, who directed it, won an Oscar for Dear Basketball with Kobe Bryant. So that's kind of a sentimental favorite for some people. Onward, I thoroughly enjoyed. Shaun the Sheep Movie, Farmageddon, it's fine. It's not as good as the first one. But by default, I think we wind up again with Soul and Wolfwalkers as the 2 that are walking away with it. For me, it's Wolfwalkers. Something about the Pixar films has become a little bit formulaic. And as much as I like Soul, I do feel that there are moments in it where I feel the gears turning. I kind of see the Pixar team pulling all the usual strings behind the scenes. But Wolfwalkers is something I have never seen before. It was fresh, it was exhilarating, and it was bold.
All right. Lael, let's try you one more time. You want to weigh in on the animated film category? Nope, we don't.
I would love to. I'm here.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
okay,
go ahead.
Sorry about that. My vote is for Wolfwalkers. It was the most mythologically alive. It reminded me of The Secret of Rowan Inish, an old John Sayles movie about Ireland that I loved. And I loved the interaction between the girl and the mythological Wolfwalker creature. I thought it was absolutely lovely. Took me back also to Secret of Kells. It was the most satisfying and sort of deeply old-fashioned, wonderful of the bunch. And I really hope Wolfwalkers gets the win.
I have to go for Soul in this category. And I liked Wolfwalkers very much, but I actually preferred the stories in Song of the Sea and Secret of Kells to in Wolfwalkers, though the artwork in Wolfwalkers is absolutely mind-bogglingly beautiful. What a gorgeous film. But Soul, for me, the music, the story behind it just worked on multiple levels for me. That would be my pick in this category. Let's move on to Best Supporting Actress. And here the nominees are Maria Bakalova for Borat's subsequent movie film, Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy, Olivia Colman for The Father, Amanda Seyfried for Mank, and Yeun for Minari. Lael, let me start with you on this category. Which one would you choose here?
I think it has to go to Yeun. She is an actress of great versatility and has had an incredible career, is not as well known to Western audiences, of course, as she is to Korean audiences. She gives just the performance of a career here. It is a absolutely sublime turn as this grandmother who realizes that her family has not turned out the way she thought that it would, and she has to forge a relationship with this little boy who doesn't want to be with her, and she's full of vulnerability and also wonderful grace. It's just a tremendous performance. I think she takes the category, hands down.
All right, Angie Han, what do you think?
I concur with Lael. She's my choice in this category too, and it's a strong category. There's a lot of actors that I really like in this one, but Yeun, I thought, gave a performance that was just so warm and so lively. She plays a character who kind of surprises the young male lead with who she is, because he was expecting something different, and I feel like that's the effect that she has on the movie when we watch it too. We're just like, wow, who is this woman? And she just makes the movie brighter. It seems like she makes the movie brighter just with every scene she's in. So I love that one.
Wade, what do you think?
This looks like it's going to be unanimous. Yeun is amazing. She is phenomenal, and I think part of what helps her in this is being in the category with Glenn Close, who also got a Razzie for this nomination for this performance. By the way, I think that's the first time it's ever happened, because when you see Glenn Close in Hillbilly Elegy and then you see Yeun in Minari, you go, oh, that's how it's supposed to be played. Everything Glenn Close doesn't do right, Yeun does right. And no offense to Glenn Close, but it's sort of like she's doing Cloris Leachman in this part. And they sort of fulfill a similar role in the two stories. But Yeun is a legendary actress. This is maybe easily one of the top 2 or 3 best performances of her career, maybe the best. She runs away with the movie. She does everything a supporting actress is supposed to do.
All right, Tim. What do you think? Supporting actress?
Let me take a little heat off Wade for that Glenn Close comment there, because I got to tell you, that bordered on parody to me. So when the Razzie happened, I was like, oh yeah, thank you. And then this happened, I'm like, what? But you know, the difference is Glenn is engaged in this really acting moment. The makeup, there's all kinds of acting going there, and I appreciate that deeply. And choices are made, actors and directors and whatnot. Is doing the exact opposite. She's simply being rather than acting, and being is always better than acting. So I'm gonna have to go there. But let me just say, Amanda Seyfried in Mank, she's just so wonderful in that movie. And this category very often is the category where and Amanda's not a starlet, but where the starlet gets their go.
All right, Charles, Best Supporting Actress.
Well, I'd second what Tim said about Amanda Seyfried, because we've so often seen Marion Davies reduced to a paper-thin caricature, and I think she found things in that all too well-known figure that we didn't know were there, but I suspect it will go to Yeun.
All right, and for me, I have to say, Yeun, I thought just gave a wonderful performance, and for much of what you all have been saying, the natural performance. And she took a terrific film, one of my favorites of the year, and just raised it up even higher with her performance, which is what you want to see with a top supporting actor or actress role. So she would be my choice. Let's take the category of Best Original Screenplay. Here the nominees are for Will Burson and Shaka King for Judas and the Black Messiah, Lee Isaac Chung for Minari, Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. For Sound of Metal, its co-writers Darius Martyr and Abraham Martyr, and The Trial of Chicago 7, Aaron Sorkin. Wade, let's start with you on this one. Your pick, Best Original Screenplay.
My pick is the one that's not here, which is The Nest. I thought Sean Durkin's screenplay for The Nest was the best original screenplay of the year, but The Nest tells an almost identical story to Minari, slightly different from all kinds of cultural and socioeconomic standpoints. So they make an interesting double feature. They're both kind of adaptations of Mosquito Coast in a way. But of those that are nominated, I think Minari and Judas and the Black Messiah are far away the best screenplays here. They're the ones that really belong here, that would be here in any other year. They're not just good screenplays, they're good original screenplays. They come from a place that we have not really seen before. They deal with very unconventional structural elements. And if I had to pick one, I think I'd go with Minari, but boy, they're both awfully well written.
Tim, can you hear me?
I can. Okay, look, I look at these. I'm not a big fan of Judas and the Black Messiah for a whole number of reasons that have to do with the way that story is being told. While at the same time, I look at that screenplay. I read that screenplay for Trial of the Chicago 7. This is good, but mostly it's just like the most screenplay. It's like it's a lot of writing, but not all of it is. And so Minari here, it's beautiful. It's so true. It rings so true, that entire story. But Promising Young Woman, that screenplay, that story, that movie has elicited a whole lot of furor in one direction or the other. And to me, good writing always does that. Good writing makes one group of people say yeah, and another group of people say no. So the one that I hope wins is Promising Young Woman.
All right. Angie, you want to share your favorite for original screenplay?
Yeah, I think Tim makes a good point. One of the most interesting things about Promising Young Women is that it's a film that I've been talking about now for over a year, ever since it premiered at Sundance, and people just can't seem to stop talking about it, whether they like it or not. It's a story that I think it feels like Promising Young Woman knows what you want from it and what you expect from it, and it is determined not to just give you what you think that you're going to get out of it, and not just for the sake of screwing with the audience or anything like that, but because it wants to make you think about the tropes that you are anticipating from this movie, and to subvert your expectations and to go a little bit deeper with the story that it's telling. So that one has my vote.
Lael.
So I thought about this category a lot in preparation for this conversation. And what it occurred to me is that it usually celebrates not just the maverick, let's say the Diablo Codys, the Charlie Kaufmans, the Sofia Coppolas, people who write things that have pure individual visions, but also, and Emerald Fennell fits that category for this, but also have something to say, really something to say. As Angie said, something that sort of taps into our cultural conversation, our zeitgeist. And I think Promising Young Woman, Emerald Fennell's fine script for that, is the one to beat in this category. There are many good ones, but I'll go with Promising Young Woman.
Charles, your pick.
I found this category kind of puzzling because in the Trial of Chicago 7, I kept hearing Sorkin in the background yelling, "Look, Mom, I'm writing." And I thought Sound of Metal was a very interesting film, but it goes off the rails about 3/4 of the way through. So I think I will be the odd one out once again. I liked Judas and the Black Messiah. I thought that was a very complex story presented in a very powerful and moving way.
For me, it would be Minari. I just loved the script, and I thought it took even mundane elements and just made them fascinating to share what the family was going through. I thought it was a surprisingly funny film. Minari has just so much wonderful humor. That's a part of it which I didn't really expect, and to me, that's kind of the art of what he does in this movie is bring all that humanity and humor to it, along with the drama, of course, of what the family's going through. Final category, Best Actor. We need to do this rather quickly, so your pick and why. The nominees are Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal, Chadwick Boseman in his last performance for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Anthony Hopkins, The Father, Gary Oldman, Mank, and Stephen Yeun in Minari. Let me start with you, Lael, your pick here.
Well, my favorite of the of the performances is a tie between Chadwick Boseman, who I think is going to win and probably should, and Anthony Hopkins, who gives just a tremendous performance of great subtlety and suppleness in the father. It's just right up there with his work from Silence of the Lambs, and so beautiful and graceful and painful to watch. And then, Chadwick Boseman, who of course is not with us, but gives just a heck of a performance in Ma Rainey's and will deserve that Oscar that he will get.
Charles.
I think Lael is right that Chadwick Boseman will win it, but he has August Wilson's words to work with. I liked Riz Ahmed because he had so little to work with and had to do so much with little dialogue, few words, and much in the way of expressions and gestures and body language. I was impressed.
Tim Cogshell.
Well, that Chadwick Boseman performance is absolutely exquisite and I love it, but it is a prescribed performance, as Charles says. Wilson is Wilson, and he gives the performance of his life and he's wonderful, but I'm with Charles. Riz Ahmed, this was new territory for him, for the directors, for the audience, all new. Haven't seen any of that before, and he just did an extraordinary job. So I really hope, though I love Chadwick, that Riz gets the nod.
Angie.
Yeah, I'm finding it hard to vote against Chadwick Boseman for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I think part of it is the fact that it is his last performance, and it's really hard not to think about that. But I do think that it's a performance that exemplifies so much of what he does really well. He's just so alive and present in this, in a way that you see across his entire filmography, whether he's playing larger than life characters or more emotional ones or more stoic ones. He does that so well here. He elevates every scene that he's in and makes everyone else in it appear better too. So yeah, I'm gonna go with him. Oh, but I do want to give a quick shout out if I can. My favorite is not nominated, and that is Delroy Lindo for The Five Bloods.
A great performance. Yeah, no question. Wade, your pick here.
Chadwick Boseman's going to win, not because it's necessarily the best, but for the reasons that Academy Awards take the temperature of where the culture and the Academy are. This is a sentimental favorite. He's very good in it, but I'd give it to him if it were a Tony. For an Oscar, I think we have to go with things that are more cinematic. And I'm a little bit struggling. I love Riz Ahmed, but I don't like the film. I love Anthony Hopkins. I think he's probably the best of the five, but I have a few problems with the film. Gary Oldman is fine. I mean, he is Mank, but Steven Yeun is really good in a really great film. And that works for me. So Steven Yeun.
All right. And I'm totally conflicted. Chadwick Boseman's performance was great. And I think I liked the film a lot better than many other people did, since it was not Best Picture nominated. But I absolutely love the work that he does there. Riz Ahmed, great too. And Anthony Hopkins, I can't pick yet in this category. I'll have to, in the next few days, come up with my selection. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll continue on Film Week with our critics. We have another panel of 5 of our critics who'll be joining us, sharing their thoughts about 4 more categories. We'll be back in just 1 minute right here on Film Week's 19th Annual Academy Awards Preview. I just want to remind you that you can ask questions of our critics in the chat. So just make sure that you do that at the bottom of the screen if you have a question you'd like to ask. And once we've recorded the program for the radio broadcast, then we'll take some of the audience questions for the very end of our live program. All right, we get set to record our next segment of Film Week. Welcome back to the 19th Annual Film Week Academy Awards Preview. I'm Larry Mantle. 10 of our Film Week critics are with us in this live virtual event. Unfortunately, we're not able to get together in person for this year's program, but wonderful to be able to come into our listeners' homes to be able to talk about the major Oscar-nominated categories. In this segment of the program, I'm joined by critics Amy Nicholson, who writes on film for The Guardian and hosts the podcast Unspooled and Zoom. Christy Lemire is film critic for RogerEbert.com and does the podcast Breakfast All Day. Claudia Puig is the president of the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. Justin Chang is LA Times film critic, and Peter Rayner, film critic for the Christian Science Monitor. All right, our first category in this segment is Best Documentary Feature, and the nominees are Collective, directed by Alexander Naneau, Crip Camp, directed by James Lebrecht and Nicole Newnham. The Mole Agent is directed by Meta Alberti. My Octopus Teacher, directed by Pippa Ehrlich and James Reed, and Time, directed by Garrett Bradley. All right, let's start with you, Justin Chang. Of the best docs, which one stood out to you this year?
I would give this to Time, which I think is just an exquisite, heartbreaking movie. It's one of the very best films I saw last year. I think what the director Garrett Bradley achieves in telling the story of this Black family over 2 decades, mixing this grainy old home movie footage and the more stylized present day footage. I think it's pretty close to pure poetry. I give almost equally high marks to Collective, which, just like Honeyland last year, has pulled off the remarkable feat of being nominated in both Best Documentary Feature and Best International Feature. Unfortunately, like Honeyland, I think it could go home empty-handed, but we'll see.
Christy.
I also love Collective. It's one of the best movies of last year. It is so understated, yet it builds steam and steadily. It's just infuriating what these journalists uncover, and does it in a really understated way. So I think Collective is going to win this category. But Time, as Justin said, is absolutely gorgeous. It is pure poetry. The Mole Agent is small and strange and sweet and crowd pleasing. Crip Camp is really illuminating and very lively. I enjoyed that one very much too. And My Octopus Teacher, I don't know, you guys, it's beautiful. The guy at the center is like this narcissistic stalker who thinks that whatever happens to the octopus happens to him. The octopus got his arm cut off. It felt like it happened to me too. No, it did not happen to you. So I kind of couldn't stand My Octopus Teacher. So Collective is the way to go.
We should mention Collective also nominated for Best International Feature. Peter, your pick of documentaries.
Of the 5, I'd say for me, the strongest was Collective. It's really a marvelous piece of investigative journalism on film that really uncovers a powerful and tragic story, beautifully structured, very powerful movie. Time, I think, is quite powerful. The structure is a little bit funky for me on that movie, but My Octopus Teacher, I don't know. That's going to win, I think. It's being promoted as a feel-good movie. Have people actually watched this movie all the way to the end who are saying that? The ads show a little tentacle, tendril, and holding a finger, like E.T., right? But it's really more like EAT if you follow it through to the end. Also, just a quick point, there were some marvelous documentaries this year that were not nominated. High at the top of the list would be City Hall, Fred Wiseman's film Gunda, the Truffle Hunters, and An American Utopia, and 76 Days, all great documentaries.
All right, Claudia, your pick in the doc category.
Well, I agree that I think Octopus Teacher will probably win. And, I also agree with Christy that there was a narcissistic feel. I was really put off by it at first, and then I went back and watched it. And then I felt like I was snorkeling. I just said, let it wash over you, literally. And it did. And I appreciated sort of, this looking at this creature that we've never thought very much about before and told from this first person perspective. And I know that they spent 8 years shooting it. They gathered more than 3,000 hours of footage. But for me, I was most moved by Crip Camp. And I think it's vital. It's inspiring. It's illuminating. It's a lesser known part of American civil rights. Many of us lived through this, but didn't really know very much about it. And it's produced by Barack and Michelle Obama's Higher Ground production company, which I don't know if that's going to be good or positive or negative, in that their company did, was it last year's favorite, American Factory, or was it the year before? Anyway, they've had other Oscar winners, but I just feel like the way in which they blended the archival footage and the interviews themselves were really colorful, and that wonderful celebration that they had at Camp Jeanette, it really deeply moved me, and I think it's going to move the Oscar voters as well.
All right, Amy, your pick here.
Well, I think the prize for Octopus Teacher is just if people eat less octopus going forward, that's the reward. Great, we should all be eating a little bit less of this incredibly intelligent animal that I'm glad we're studying, as well as dogs and pigs and the other animals that we know are smart. To me, I think the absolute winner is Collective. Like, it's just, for people who haven't seen this, it is the story of like what happens when sports journalists, pull on the thread of a story of over 60 deaths that happened because of a fire at a nightclub called the Collective in Bucharest. And you wind up just revealing the entire ugly skeleton of a country. I think it's an incredibly relatable story. But what I want to come out of this year is I want Time to be the documentary that maybe it doesn't win, but it's the one that everybody sees. I think it is a necessary documentary. I want it to play in schools. I want it to play in law schools. I want it to play for Congress. I want this film to be known, even if I think the better craftsmanship goes to Collective.
All right. For me, Collective and Crip Camp, I thought were just both standouts. And I go back and forth on those two, but I think Crip Camp might edge it out just a bit. Both extremely compelling films with very fascinating personalities, and I thought were very well told stories. Next category, Best Supporting Actor, and here the nominees are Sacha Baron Cohen for The Trial of Chicago 7, Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah, Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami, Paul Raci, Sound of Metal, and Lakeith Stanfield, Judas and the Black Messiah. Amy, let me start with you in this category, Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all in on Lakeith Stanfield. Like, I think he has been one of our great American treasures ever since his debut in Short Term 12. He's amazing. And I think, to have a film where the two leads are somehow nominated against each other in Best Supporting is a little bizarre. That would be my main quibble, is like, this is not a supporting performance in the slightest. And even put up next against Daniel Kaluuya, that's like the latter performance. He's playing a leader. But what Lakeith does in this film, he's playing a person who wears all of his emotions really silently. Everything on him is interior. The struggle, his hopes, his possibilities of maybe becoming a better person than he thinks he is, it's beautiful. Like, he does not command your attention. He commands the shadows. And I still think he walks away with this entire movie. So hands down, Lakeith for me.
Christy, your pick.
I'm also confused about the fact that you have Judas and the Black Messiah both in the supporting category. Someone's got to be a lead, right? I totally agree with Amy that Lakeith is amazing in this. And while Daniel Kaluuya has won a lot of the awards leading up to this, and it's a very commanding and charismatic performance, which quite frequently does win the supporting actor or actress award at the Oscars, what Lakeith is doing is really difficult in a different way and in a more subtle, tricky way, because he's having to play various versions of the same character with subtle differences. And then those little differences are constantly evolving. And then they're all in conflict with each other. And so he's constantly changing throughout the course of the film, whereas Kaluuya is amazing, but he's like sort of the same guy, powerfully magnetic guy the whole way through. So I would like to see Lakeith win, but also Paul Raci, you guys, is just the heart of Sound of Metal and brings such authenticity to it, and is such a lovely source of warmth in a film that can be cold and difficult a lot of the times. But I'm also afraid Sacha Baron Cohen's going to win it because he just shows up and is Sacha Baron Cohen. So anyway, it's tough.
Peter.
I like all the performances in this category, including Sacha Baron Cohen. I think it's a marvelous performance. It demonstrates, if we needed any demonstration, that he can really act, and not just be a goofball. It's not a cartoon performance by any means. Lakeith Stanfield, I think it's a remarkable performance because it shows you both the thrill that he gets from being a double agent and also the self-loathing that comes from that in very subtle ways. Paul Raci, I think, for me, would be the best of the five by a narrow margin because, it really is such a deeply felt, such a soulful performance that it really is kind of the core of this film in many ways. And I think the most artful of the performances in that film.
Claudia.
This is one of those rare categories where I'd be happy to see any of the nominated people win because they're all such great performances, and that's not always the case. I think it's going to go to Daniel Kaluuya because I think that's a pretty showy role, and he seems to be the favorite. And he's been great. He was great in Get Out. He was great in Widows, and he's there's a wide spectrum of what he's able to do here. He's warm, he's confident, but he's also aware of his eloquence as a revolutionary leader. But like Amy and Christy, I have a real soft spot for Lakeith Stanfield because I think he makes any movie he's in a better movie. He's just that actor. I love him. On the other hand, I also love Paul Raci because I feel like that's such a lived-in performance. I actually looked him up and I found out that he is a child of deaf parents, and he's struggled with substance abuse, and he has actually worked in programs for deaf addicts, which is why that maybe that performance feels so natural and so wonderful and lived in.
Yeah, I had to look up. I sadly wasn't familiar with him. I wasn't sure he was an actor because he just came across like they took some guy that was his real life job. Justin, your pick here.
I will be maybe the lone person to speak up for the showiness. Like, I totally endorse the showiness of Daniel Kaluuya's performance, even though I agree on an intellectual level that Lakeith Stanfield was maybe doing the kind of more artful, subterranean interior kind of work. But I just could not take my eyes off Daniel Kaluuya in Judas and the Black Messiah. I think it's an electrifying performance. I think that in this movie, which is of course about the lead up to Fred Hampton's death, he floods the screen with life and brings him back to life in this movie context. I love Lakeith Stanfield. I love also the fact that no one was more surprised to be nominated than he was. And, and people have talked about possible vote splitting in this category. I think vote splitting sometimes gets we pay too much attention to the possibility of vote splitting. It's like people know who to vote for in this category. And I think that just the fact that both actors were nominated shows incredible regard from the Academy for Judas and the Black Messiah. And I absolutely endorse the Paul Raci love too. I think he's wonderful in the film.
This is a tough category, as you're all describing how challenging this one is. I think for me, Paul Raci, for what I said earlier, but to me, there is no wrong choice in the category. Best Adapted Screenplay, the nominees are More Than I Have Time to Read in Sacha Baron Cohen's Borat subsequent movie film. The Father, it's Christopher Hampton and Florian Zeller. For Nomadland, Chloé Zhao. One Night in Miami, Kemp Powers. And The White Tiger, Ramin Bahrani. So let's start in this one. Peter, let's start with you. Your pick, Adapted Screenplay.
For me, I think the best of these is The White Tiger. A movie that has otherwise been sort of shafted in the Oscars. It's a terrific adaptation of a Booker Prize-winning novel by the director Ramin Bahrani. I think it's a fascinating incendiary movie that really shows you the kind of odyssey of this character from just a tea servant to a mogul, and it really has tremendous flair and chooses aspects of the novel that are both cinematic and dramatic in ways that I think are exemplary. So that would be my choice.
Okay.
What is Borat being adapted from? I'm just curious. It's the best adapted screenplay.
Yeah,
it's a sequel. It's a sequel to Borat, Peter.
Adapted from the first one.
Adapted from the first one. Yes.
Adapted from
Funny.
the first one. That's a stretch.
All right.
Okay.
Claudia, your pick, Adapted Screenplay, and we need to do this very briefly.
I say The Father. I think Florian Zeller and Christopher Hampton adapted this play, which I'd seen at the Pasadena Playhouse, so well. It never feels stagey or claustrophobic, as sometimes adaptations do, or just very theatrical. I think it's compassionate, it's cleverly written, and it's structured really well so that we feel we're in his shoes. I think it's going to go to Nomadland, but I'm rooting for The Father.
Justin.
I like The Father a lot. I'm going to go with Nomadland. Weirdly, I know, because that movie's liberties that it's taken with Jessica Bruder's excellent 2017 book have earned it a lot of criticism. But I love that this is a very free-form adaptation. It feels less like a direct adaptation than a conversation with the book, and even a transformation of it. The way that Chloé Zhao blurs the lines between narrative and documentary. It doesn't work for everyone, but it really worked for me.
All right. Christy.
I also want The Father to win. It's just this incredible magic act right before your eyes. It's constantly evolving, but not in a gimmicky way, in a way that makes you constantly rethink perspective and truth. I loved it, and it gives the actors such meaty work to play with here. But weirdly, you guys, I feel like Borat is the favorite here. It won the Writers Guild Award. I feel like there's weird momentum behind all 18,000 people who worked on it. So
yeah, it's because half the membership of the Writers Guild wrote the script.
Probably. So Borat might win. Very strange.
Yeah, Amy.
I mean, the punk in me would absolutely die laughing if Borat won. Great, absolutely blow it up. But to me, I'm really pushing for Kemp Powers and One Night in Miami. I mean, Kemp Powers was a journalist before he was a playwright. He wrote this play and then he adapted the play into the movie. He changed a lot about the play. He added 40 minutes at the beginning to make it more of a cinematic story. And I think the little micro tweaks he did in there turned this film, that's set in the 60s, that has these characters we know, into something that I found so relatable about who are all of our responsibilities as people in the world to kind of tell stories, shape things, bring things to life. Like who are we responsible for in doing what we do in life? And I just think that film's an absolute knockout. And I wish it had been slid into the Best Picture nominees as well.
For me, as much as I love Nomadland, thought it was just a wonderful film. I think for the adapted screenplay, my choice would be The Father, which I thought just got at such subtlety and nuance and had a difficult task. I won't go too far for those who haven't seen the film, but in the way it reveals things about what you're seeing, very powerful. Best Actress, our nominees are Viola Davis for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Andra Day for The United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby in Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand for Nomadland, and Carey Mulligan, Promising Young Woman. Let's start, Claudia, with you on this one again, real briefly, please.
Yeah, this is another one of those really tough categories because everybody is great. I think it's almost going to be a tie. For me, it kind of is a tie between Carey Mulligan and Viola Davis. I think Carey Mulligan gives the best performance of an already superb career. And, this fable about female empowerment, she gives it the fierceness, the intelligence, the daring, everything you need in that. And just the way she gazes into people, you feel that she's boring into people and exposing them. And we can't take our eyes off her. But Viola Davis is also, it's like an acting masterclass as this proud, domineering, diva. And it's kind of not a supporting part. I mean, it kind of is a supporting part. And then when she won for Fences, that kind of wasn't a supporting part. So I don't know if that's going to even out. But I feel like it's named after her.
All right, Peter, real briefly, please.
I think these are all strong performances. In some ways, I like the performances more than some of the movies that they appeared in. But Viola Davis, for me, gives the strongest performance. I think she'll probably also win. I think her makeup is a little regrettable, the sort of Betty Davis and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane look that she has. But it's a ferocious performance, an incendiary piece of work. And
that makeup is intentional.
Highly deserving.
Yeah, Amy.
I'd really prefer to not see Viola or Frances McDormand winning. I think they've won enough. I mean, to me, Andra Day, United States versus Billie Holiday, say what you will about the Golden Globes, and they deserve a lot of hate. This film did not get a major awards push in the critics groups. They put this performance on the map, and it is absolutely a barnstormer. I think it's incredible. But I kind of also want to give Carey this win. She hasn't been nominated since 2010 for An Education. She's never won. And this character has so many layers that she still keeps to herself even at the end. You can argue about her nonstop. I think she's astounding.
Justin.
Nobody knows what's going to happen in this category. Viola Davis won the SAG. Carey Mulligan won the Critics' Choice Award. Andra Day won the Golden Globe. Frances McDormand won the BAFTA. I would give this to the one who hasn't won any of those televised precursors, and that's Vanessa Kirby, who I think is just extraordinary in Pieces of a Woman. The movie has some issues. She is not one of them. That first opening 30-minute sequence alone, but even what happens after that, such beautiful interior work, just stunning work.
Christy.
I agree with Amy that Viola and Frances have already won so much, even though they are both very deserving here. I love what Carey Mulligan is doing in Promising Young Woman, the way I love what Lakeith Stanfield is doing in Judas and the Black Messiah, in that she has to play various slightly different versions of the same character, yet they are all distinct, yet they are all memorable, yet they are all powerful, and it is the best work of a really eclectic and smartly chosen career.
For me, Frances McDormand, and I know she's won so many awards and so many honors, but I felt like her deep understanding of the character that she was playing was on full display in a truly great film. All right, we're going to bring back all 10 of our critics in the next segment of the program, talk about the Best Director and Best Picture categories. You're listening to the 19th Annual Film Week Academy Awards preview, a virtual live event. We'll be back in just 90 seconds. All right, we're going to go into our final segment now. Critics, I want to let you know, because we went long on our first two segments, we now have about 10 minutes for the final segment. So that obviously is about a minute per critic, just to let you know, for these two categories. So we're going to launch into that, and then we'll be closing out the radio broadcast portion, and we'll go to questions from our live audience on the special program that we've got right now. Welcome back to our 19th Annual Film Week Academy Awards preview. I'm Larry Mantle. Wonderful to have you with us. This year it's entirely different. Instead of being able to see you at the Theater at Ace Hotel in downtown Los Angeles, we're instead coming into Film Week listeners' homes for this very special virtual event. All of our critics joining us from their homes as well, as they have been for our radio program each and every week as well. We now go into the final two of the major categories, Best Director and Best Picture. And let me share the Best Directing nominees. They are Thomas Vinterberg for Another Round, David Fincher for Mank, Lee Isaac Chung, Minari, Chloé Zhao for Nomadland, and Emerald Fennell for Promising Young Woman. The Best Picture nominees, all 8 of them, are The Father, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. All right, let's start with you, Claudia Puig, your pick for Best Directing and Best Picture.
I think it's going to be a split. It's going to go to Chloé Zhao for Best Director, and she is my pick. She is a superbly, massively talented director. The way I love how she focuses on the forgotten or little seen people and treats them with dignity and respect. So that's my director. And for Best Picture, Minari, my hands down favorite film of the year. It's so beautiful and sensitive and intimate and stirring. The performances are nuanced and perfect. I feel like it's a warm hug, and we needed that hug this year. And it's the movie, it's the story about the American dream, and it just feels like the right movie to honor this year.
All right. Christy Lemire, you're picking the 2 final categories.
Chloé Zhao wins and Nomadland wins, and I feel fantastic about both of those. The momentum has been building for her and for the film throughout this entire weird award season that we have been in. And she makes it look so effortless, doesn't she? We're just hanging out with Frances McDormand, just hanging out, and the sun is setting, and when she's in the van and making friends. But so much work had to go into how exquisitely beautiful that film is, and how every beat just feels natural and authentic and lived in. And to have a veteran like McDormand with all these non-actors and make it blend so seamlessly is such a tough trick to pull off. So that's what's going to happen, I hope.
Tim Cogshell.
Yeah, I think the gods of Zoom may still have control of my camera there. But in this category, first thing I do is I knock out Thomas Vinterberg and I knock out David Fincher, so I can get myself 2 more slots. And then the next thing I do is I include Regina King in one of those slots, and George C. Wolfe, the director of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, director of One Night in Miami, and in those 2 now empty director slots. But that's okay. That's just me here. It's certain that Chloé Zhao for Nomadland is going to win.
And Best Picture, your choice, Tim?
Best Picture, look, the Best Picture directed this year was directed by Paul Greengrass. It's called News of the World. Not very many people saw that movie for a whole lot of reasons. And I really would love to see Ma Rainey in this category. It's not there. I'm going to go with Sound of Metal because, again, it's just an extraordinary movie about a subject, about a character, about a person that we've simply never seen in cinema before. So based on originality alone, I'll go with Sound of Metal.
Yeah, I'm with you about News of the World. Tom Hanks starring Western, Paul Greengrass, as you said, the director, which I thought was a terrific film. I really enjoyed it and was disappointed. I said earlier, I was disappointed about Ma Rainey not being included on the list. Justin Chang.
I am recusing myself, as I have all season, on any words about Minari, because Lee Isaac Chung is a dear friend. In my very completely unbiased way, I totally echo the love that everyone's been sharing here. I think it's a wonderful film. I have no distance from it, of course. So with that movie out of the equation, I am totally in the tank for Chloé Zhao and for Nomadland, for all the reasons that Christy, among others, have articulated here. And I would say I do wish that Kelly Reichardt had been nominated for Best Director, and that First Cow had been nominated as one of the best movies of the year.
We were waiting.
You waited so late in the show, Fred. Justin.
I was panicking. I was like, what am I going to do?
The pun master, Justin Chang. Yeah, and I think a lot of us here would say First Cow deserved consideration here and was a terrific film from Kelly Reichardt. Amy, your picks here.
Well, yeah, thumbs up for First Cow, thumbs down for that pun. Thanks, Justin. Chloé Zhao has this in the bag. So I just want to take a beat and recognize how amazing and strange that is. That's just wonderful that like all the momentum is behind a film that's great, fantastic. Chloe's last film, The Writer, was also great. And that was a film that was siloed onto only being discussed for Independent Spirit Awards. Now she's the Oscar heavyweight. Now she's coming in and doing a Marvel movie. That's amazing. And I think this whole lineup of Best Picture nominees just shows what a weird, fantastic, wonderful moment we're in for cinema. There's nothing in here that is an obvious Best Picture winner compared to the kind of stuff that has been winning for the last 2 decades. Nothing lit by all candles, nothing that's a war picture. So by this list alone, I think cinema is in great shape. It's a really good year.
Angie Han.
I have been going back and forth a lot on these 2 categories because they're both filled with such great nominees. I'm gonna split my vote. I'm gonna go with Chloé Zhao for Nomadland. I think that she demonstrates such curiosity and openness and empathy, and that is what really makes the picture. As I think Christy pointed out, it also takes a lot of planning, but you don't feel it when you're watching. You feel like you're just kind of living in it and following these characters through their story. But then for picture, I have to go Minari. I just loved it top to bottom. I love that it feels like a memory and it feels very nostalgic, but in a way where it's not just clouded by that nostalgia. It's also really sharp and observant about how everyone in that movie feels. And I also just need to give a very late shout out to Han Ye, who has not been getting as much awards nomination attention as some of her co-stars, Steven Yeun and Yeun, but she is, I think, the linchpin that the whole movie hangs on. I love her so much.
I'm glad you raised her performance. I think that's terrific to recognize her for that. Charles, I know you don't want to pick in director, but the Best Picture for you.
Well, I'm going to be the Grinch as usual. And I would ask, does anyone really think in 10 years or even 5, people are going to be curling up with the Trial of the Chicago 7 or Mank? No, they're not going to go back and watch those any more than they do The Hurt Locker or Crash, whereas they will be watching Soul and Wolfwalkers. And I would start a write-in campaign for one of those.
All right. Lael, your picks here. We have a little problem getting Lael, so let's go. Peter Rayner, your picks here.
Well, I'll be Grinch number 2. I think I have some issues with all of the 5 nominees and actually the Best Pictures as well. But of the nominated directors, I would go with Chloé Zhao, who I think will also win the Oscar, because I like more moments in Nomadland than I did moments in other films. I think at its best, it's a kind of lyrical, digressive.
All right, Lael, do we have, I'm sorry, you cut out, Peter. Lael, we have you?
Right, there are a number of fine films in the bunch. To me, there's nothing that rises to the level of last year's Parasite, which is still pretty unforgettable to me. But my personal favorite, I would say, was maybe either The Father or Minari. Both of those I loved a great deal, and they sort of moved me and intrigued me and disturbed me and inspired me. But I also would be very happy if Nomadland won, and I think it will. I just want to give a little shout out, though, to Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, a little indie film that was directed by Eliza Hittman that a year on, I still can't get out of my mind. So I would encourage people to look that one up.
All right. And Peter, did you have a final thought? Because you cut out at the end of what you were saying.
Yeah, I guess in terms of Best Picture, I would probably go with the father of those 8 nominees. I think it's powerful and moving and extremely interesting on many levels. But I would like to second Lael's thumbs up for Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and Eliza Hittman. I think that's just a marvelous movie. For me, maybe the best film of the year. Also, Ma Rainey was not nominated. White Tiger. And Ammonite, Francis Lee directed, which I thought was a marvelous film with a great performance by Kate Winslet. So a lot of films that weren't nominated, I think, should also, be recognized while we're here.
All right. And if I kept track correctly, Wade, I believe you have the final word here on your picks.
Wow. I'm going to say that the 3 films that belong in both of these categories that aren't there is The Nest, One Night in Miami, and News of the World. I think in any other year they would have been there. I think Chloé Zhao is going to win both of these. I don't think she should. I don't particularly care for the film. I think everyone thinks it's kind of a 21st century Grapes of Wrath. For me, it's like a 21st century Harry and Tonto without Harry or Tonto. So if I'm looking at this and saying in a non-pandemic year where people aren't depressed, which movie really checks all the check marks for a great film, a well-directed film, an original film that goes right to the heart, that is daring and bold, that takes chances, that's unafraid, that is Minari, Lee Isaac Chung, in both categories.
All right. And I'm completely torn in both these categories because for me, the films I found head and shoulders above the others for me were Nomadland and Minari, both just wonderful films. So by a nose, Chloé Zhao for Nomadland and Nomadland by a nose over Minari, but both of them just wonderful, wonderful films. I want to thank all of you for joining us, our critics taking part in this program on Film Week, our 19th annual Film Week Academy Awards preview done virtually. All of our critics, as they are every week for the radio version of Film Week, coming your way from their homes. And also, if you would like to see the program, including the audience questions that followed what you've heard on the radio, you can go to kpcc.org/in-person, and you'll have your opportunity to actually see the whole event, which has a little bit of the behind the scenes about how we recorded it for the radio program as well. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful weekend from all of us at Film Week. All right, and for those of you with us for the live event, we're going to now take your questions, an opportunity for you to talk about any topics in film. It doesn't just have to be about this year's Oscars. You can, Peter, you said something about Billy Wilder 10 years ago, and it's bothered me ever since, or whatever the question could be or the reference you want to make. So just get that to us in the chat. And again, the location where you're watching our program from and your first name, please. We'd really appreciate that so that we get a nice sense of place. And all right, I'm getting the questions passed on to me. This is from Cassie. Unfortunately, she didn't put where she's from. Again, if with any future questions, you could let us know where you're from. That would be great. Said, I went into Mank with high expectations and came out very disappointed. Any other critic have that reaction? Charles?
Yeah, I think it's smug. I think it thinks it's much cleverer than it is. And I think it assumes everyone is obsessed with Citizen Kane and knows the details of its creation. And I thought, why are people blowing whistles about this?
It left me cold, I would say. I admire the craft of it and the meticulous detail in not just, recreating this era, but also recreating like the very specific lighting and shadows of Citizen Kane. But it left me cold the way a lot of Fincher's films do.
Larry?
I've loved Fincher other times, but to me, this is the least interesting of the Fincher films. I was bored. I had to fight sleep. I thought it was beautiful production design wise, but I was bored.
Wait,
but I did enjoy. I was going to say, I did enjoy the fun twist where Gary Oldman yells, I'm 43. And you're just like, what? My mind.
Wade,
Yeah, I think part of the issue with Mank is that it's not enough of what people are expecting. If you go to a movie that is ostensibly about old Hollywood, that is going to recreate all of this, you don't expect it to take place primarily in a room in the desert. You want to see more of Hollywood. You want to see more of Hollywood Boulevard. You want to see more of the period recreation. You sort of want to be bathed in the period. And most of this movie, frankly, takes place in a room in the desert and at San Simeon. It's very small. It's almost like a stage play. And that's what I think people find a little bit of a cheat.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I would love to say, I mean,
yeah, Amy? Yeah.
I'm an old Hollywood buff, and I absolutely love part of the story that Mank is telling, which is the gubernatorial race of Upton Sinclair and how Hollywood stabbed it in the back. That's a story everybody needs to know. But what really bothered me is that has absolutely nothing to do with Mankiewicz. He didn't care. He didn't believe how he believed about it. He was not a political guy in that sense. He was anti-union. So the fact that this film, which came in all heavyweight historical, was centered on a lie broke me. I just could not value it since it wasn't going to tell the truth about anything.
Someone else wanted to weigh in. Lael, yeah.
I think it would play a lot better on the big screen. And this is a film that we would have, I appreciated it for what it did technically and visually and all of that, but I think it would have had a much greater impact had you seen it on a big screen.
Let's move on to another question. Rick asks, specifically for you, Justin, what movies surprised you most of the 2020 films in a good or a bad way?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I feel on spot. I will say of 2020 films, my biggest surprise was thinking that Vitalina Varela, the film by the great Portuguese director Pedro Costa, was my #1 movie of the year. Kind of paired with time, actually. He's a director that is challenging for a lot of folks, including myself in the past. There's something sometimes about finding a director that you have maybe struggled with or not loved. So, we can apply this to many filmmakers under discussion this year, when they make something that is just, oh, this is a masterpiece. So that movie, of course, is nowhere near the Academy Awards race. It was Portugal's submission for Best International Feature and did not get very far. I do encourage people to seek it out.
All right. This is from Connor in Silver Lake. For you, Charles, do you think Wolfwalkers has a chance to beat a Pixar film in Soul?
Well, I hope so. I mean, I love Soul. I like Pete Docter. I also love Wolfwalkers, and I like Tom Moore. And Tom has had the misfortune to be nominated twice before, always against Pete Docter. So he was up against Up and Inside Out, and the timing has worked out that way again. I'm sure that Soul is seen as having the momentum behind it because it's got that enormous Disney marketing machine. But I love both films, and I have a really hard time trying to pick one over the other because they're so different and each is so good in its own way.
This is from Alan in Hollywood. Can we say that expanding the nominations is a failure? We're not getting more popular films nominated, just more obscure films that few people are going to watch. Who wants to weigh in? Raise your hand to weigh in. Wade?
Yes, it's a failure. And it was a failure the first time it was tried. When you go all the way back into the 30s, the first time that we had about roughly a decade when they were doing this, you had very little interest generally from the people. And because of the way that it was mathematically calculated, you wound up with a lot of splits between director and picture. The same thing has happened since we went to more than 5 nominees. We have had an uncanny number of director-picture splits. And in years where there are director-picture splits, the interest of the audience, the interest of the public tends to wane. I think when you go back to 5 nominees, it becomes a much more competitive race. And when you don't do this prioritized ranking in the voting, you wind up with whichever one of the 5 gets the most votes wins, as opposed to, well, how many first and second and third place votes, and you do this weird algorithm. And then kind of the least hated film winds up winning. That's what the problem is now, is that this calculation with the prioritization pushes the least hated film to the top. Green Book being a perfect example. Nobody loved Green Book, but nobody really hated it either. It was kind of wishy-washy and squishy.
I hated it.
Did. I hated it.
I hated Green Book.
Academy members, Academy members, Academy voters, Academy voters.
Hold the thought. Wait, yeah, Justin, yeah.
I think there are, I love director picture splits sometimes. I don't have anything against them. I don't think it's a failure. I think that we've seen, Green Book accepted, the most recent winners like Parasite and Moonlight are all the results of this system, and you could not have necessarily achieved those under previous ways of doing things. And I just have to say, I reject the idea that popularity is something that should be rewarded. I mean, popularity is your reward. If you want an Oscar, you should be great. And I reject the label obscure. I think it's a word that marginalizes movies that don't necessarily deserve to be marginalized. I would love for more unpopular movies. I think there should be a category for best unpopular film at the Oscars if there was a movement to get a popular one. They don't need any more recognition than they've gotten already.
Lael.
I think it goes both ways. Look, before this multiple nominee situation, we had Crash, which won and didn't deserve to win Best Picture, in my opinion. But since then, we've had things like Black Panther, which was nominated and never would have been if we'd had only stuck to the 5 nominees. So I think it allows for diversity among our nominees, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think right now it's not so bad.
Okay, one more. Tim, did you want to say something?
I did. I just want to second what
move on.
Lael and Justin said. Moonlight simply does not have an Academy Award under the old system. And we have seen Marvel films, and a few years ago, some years ago, Lord of the Rings films, these big, gigantic sort of Hollywood movies occupy that space. Whatever allows other kinds of films into the space, that's the thing that I want to be. If it's 10 category, if it's 5, whatever that is. But whatever means that little bitty films, as well as some of the big boys, can get into the race, that's what I want to happen.
All right, Kirk in Huntington Beach, why are comedies so often ignored? Peter, you've raised this point.
Well, they're not considered art. Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, Steve Martin, and a million other people aside, somehow the Academy thinks that laughing is undignified when it comes to handing out awards. And that, of course, is ridiculous. But I don't see that changing anytime soon. I think that's the reason. And, hopefully there'll be a new generation of voters who don't feel that way.
Angie, you have any thoughts on this one?
I have wondered this myself, because it's, obviously a comedy can be just as challenging or interesting or hard to make as a drama. I think I can't speak to it from like a history of the Academy Awards perspective, because that's just not what I'm good at. But I do wonder if it's because it just seems so easy. I think a lot of the movies that get nominated in dramatic movies that get nominated are ones that people think like, yes, this is like something like very important, and like I didn't respond to it, but I can like see a lot of the craft in it. Whereas I think people judge a lot of comedies just by like, did it make me laugh or not? So
well, in this here, I'm trying to think of what would be a worthy comedy.
Borat. I mean, it's getting
40-year-old version.
Yeah. Palm
40-year-old
Springs.
version was great.
Springs.
Palm Springs.
Maybe Palm Springs. Yeah.
Eurovision.
Palm Springs. Wow.
Yeah. Eurovision.
Pacific. Best song.
Even if they had a best comedy category or best, they should have more.
Well, that's what they do at the Golden Globes.
Yeah,
Right.
comedy or musical, maybe.
Right.
It seems like animation is more open to comedic dramas than live action films when it comes to giving awards.
Well, in this country, at least, they don't make a lot of animated tragedies. So
not intentionally anyway.
Well, no. I had to sit through Arlo the Alligator Boy last week.
So does that qualify? All right.
The kind of drama that you get in something like Your Name or Spirited Away is not an American animated film. So they have this very upbeat image, and a lot of animators like doing comic pieces. So that's what does get nominated, but they don't make it to the bigger categories when they often should.
Tom in Venice asks, how do you think the pandemic affected potential nominees? For example, I Carry You With Me. Anyone have a thought about
I love
pandemic?
that movie.
Claudia,
Yes.
yeah.
I was just thinking about that. I have a list of movies. La Llorona is another one. I Carry You With Me. I'm No Longer Here. There was just, and St. Francis, Song Without a Name. There are all these wonderful, particularly foreign language films, because kind of went under the radar, I think. I think the pandemic did affect it. On the other hand, something like I Carry You With Me will get when it's given a showcase by Sony Pictures, it will get out there, and everyone's seeing everything the same way. So there's that sort of leveling or equalizing aspect. But I think the pandemic did affect, obviously, it affected films.
All right. Let's see. Richard in Santa Ana says, over the years, we see a lot of changes to categories. Ignoring the length of this ceremony, he says, is there a category that you folks would like to see added? A category? I see you nodding, Amy. Do you have something in mind?
Yeah, I think one category that people have been talking about for a bit we'd like to see is best stunt work. The people who put their bodies on the line to do amazing stunts. And those of us who love movies know that we love practical stunts more than CG stunts. And so to reward those people who are keeping the old school craft of that alive, I'd love to see a stunt category added. And then you get your blockbusters looped in. Aren't we happy about that? They're not just shunted off to sound design.
Christy, do you have a category you'd add?
I was gonna say, hold on. I was gonna say stunt work as well, because it is so hard and it's so crucial to so many different kinds of great filmmaking. I know that's been in the works, talking about that for a while now.
Larry,
Tim?
Casting. And the casting directors, the side casting directors have been talking about this for years and years and years, and very specifically the DGA have been holding that up.
Directors Guild, yeah.
Yeah, the Directors Guild. And I have to tell you, casting, you have no idea how important that is. Go through the list of the actors who might have been in a given role and ask yourself how that would have worked out if it wasn't for a casting director to straighten that situation out.
Yeah, Wade?
Yeah, the sound branch of the Academy decided to combine sound editing and sound mixing because they didn't think anybody knew the difference. And literally the year that they elected to do that, the two awards went to two different films, and proving that they were wrong. So I would say, let's bring that back again. There should be separate awards for sound mixing and for sound editing because they're two completely different crafts.
All right,
And can I add one more? The SAG has best ensemble, and I think we could use that category as well. I mean, look at something like Minari and some of the other films that we're talking about here. We could definitely use that, and that I agree with the casting thing that Tim mentioned as well.
All right,
Larry.
Yeah, Peter, sure.
Has the student Oscar category gone away? I know there was student Oscars for many years, and then it was controversial, and I haven't seen that listed anywhere. Does anybody know if we still do that?
So far as I know, they do, but it's not
never announced on the show anyway.
No, it's a separate ceremony, I think.
Yeah, I think they should mention it on the actual show. It'd be so inspiring for these young student filmmakers to have their names broadcast on the live show. I also would love to see the Jean Hirschholz and the honorary Oscars back on the show and not done as a separate event with little blips from the show. I think that's also very important, particularly these days when the history of Hollywood and of movies is so important that we highlight that more than we're doing now.
Glenn in Pasadena says, I had a big problem with the tone and genre inconsistency in Promising Young Woman, which crossed from Black comedy to straight up tragic drama, despite its attempt to recapture comedy too late. It lost me when it did that. Why does it work for those for whom it works?
It's actually also a horror movie. At its core, it's a horror movie from the very beginning. When you look at the titles and they're kind of like dripping, it looks like like
and
a 70s horror film.
The
score, the slow push in The Lunch with Alison Brie, the slow push and the score. I think what she does is masterful. It's an incredible balancing act tonally, and it's so hard to pull off. And Carey Mulligan's understatement in her performance gives it that power and provides that anchor. So it's a tricky thing, and she does it masterfully.
All right.
Real quickly, Larry.
Tim.
It's Wade here. So
Wade, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to point out what it does is basically something that Jordan Peele kind of opened the door to, which is taking a genre film and mainstreaming it in an artful way. So if you understand the genre pedigree of the film, those tonal shifts are really not a problem.
I feel like sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, Angie.
I was just going to say, if to be the fact that Promising Young Woman's tone changes a lot, it was part of the kind of cleverness and the fun of it. It's a movie where you find yourself laughing a lot, but a lot of those laughs just become increasingly bitter and angry and painful as like even as you're laughing, because a lot of the jokes are based in such painful truths. So, I mean, I can completely see why if you were expecting a comedy that would be annoying to you, that it doesn't really go that way. But to me, it worked.
If I may, Larry, it is
Yes,
a really, really funny movie, Promising Young Woman. But comedy is hard. Is what we were talking about with that comedy category in the Oscars. Why? Because comedy is hard. What I think is funny, you may not think is funny. I will suggest this about Promising Young Woman. Depending on how one feels about how that movie ends, where it ought to end for them, that's when they decide whether or not they like that movie and it was funny. If you want that movie to end one way, you don't like it. If you want that movie to end another way, it's the funniest thing you've ever seen and you love it. So it's a self-check, Promising Young Woman. Nothing to do with that movie. That movie is exactly what the director intends. She's saying exactly what she means to say. You got to check you when you're watching that movie.
Yeah, exactly. I think that she knows that comedy is of what we laugh at implicates us and how we feel about things. And so it's almost a trick to trick you into laughing and then feel bad about it. And I love having the knife twisted on me, so I couldn't admire more how she did it.
Stuart in Valley Glen says, I agree with Justin that Vanessa Kirby delivered the finest performance by a leading actress. Why hasn't she received the attention she deserves?
I think it has to do with the movie itself. A lot of people were put off by the movie. I've heard people say, I don't want to watch that. It's going to be painful to watch. So I think maybe not enough people actually did see it, number one. And number two, those who did were put off by the movie. Maybe Shia LaBeouf was a factor. There were other things that were not great about that movie. She was amazing.
That first half hour is amazing.
Yeah.
The camera work, that whole long 30-minute long tracking shot, and she has to go through every emotion. It's physically challenging. And then nothing matches that from that point on. It becomes very rote and kind of predictable and safe from that point on.
All right. Anybody else?
Yeah,
quick comment. Yeah, Lael.
It is a tremendous performance, and she was honored, I think, in Venice, maybe at the Venice Film Festival, which she very much deserved. But to Claudia's point, it is excruciating for a woman who has been through childbirth, who has been through that. It's very, very hard to watch, very painful. And I also know a number of women who didn't want to watch Room, mothers, for the same reason, because it was just too daunting, too terrifying for them to imagine going through that. So, you know, sometimes it's just the subject matter.
All right. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank all of you, all 10 of you, for joining us and juggling our time constraints, doing such a beautiful job of making your points about the performances, the writing, the films, the directing that were most meaningful for you. Also to raise some of the gems that you saw during the year that were not honored with nominations by the Academy, and to remind us of some of those films to go back and see them, ones that we might have missed over the course of the year. So thank you all very much. Let me just quickly list them off again. Angie Hahn, Charles Solomon, Lael Loewenstein, Tim Cogshell, Wade Major, Amy Nicholson, Christy Lemire, Claudia Puig, Justin Chang, and Peter Rayner. I'm Larry Mantle. Thank you so much for joining us for the 19th Annual FilmWeek Academy Awards preview. We hope to see you in person next year. Have a great rest of your day.